Hello and welcome to Epic Loot Radio. My name's Brian, and joining me, we've got Rory Khan back on the podcast, joined also by Chillie, to talk about all things gaming as we barrel into the month of September. For those of you who are joining us on the live show, we've got a couple changes coming to the podcast in September. The podcast is going to be 100% live over on Ginger Gaming Radio. That's where you can find the video podcast. That's where you can find all the highlights from the show itself and more. Beyond just that, I do want to say thanks to Vern, WG Productions, and Keelan for joining the podcast legends, helping to support the overall cost of the podcast itself. And that is what enables me to bring you the podcast in MP3 format. If you guys aren't aware, you can search wherever podcasts are found, Epic Loot Radio, go subscribe to the podcast in MP3 form, and it comes out day and date with the video podcast as well. So hopefully you guys enjoy that, and thank you guys and to the members over on Ginger Gaming Radio for supporting the show. Chillie and Rory, thank you guys so much for taking time to sit down and talk about video games this week. We've had a huge week with Gamescom. We've had a huge week in terms of, like, as we look forward to the rest of 2021 and into 2022. Rory, you've been playing Final Fantasy XIV. You've been doing some PvP recently. I wanted to talk to you first and foremost because we haven't had you on the show in a while. But first question to you, what have you been playing? What you've been up to? And then we'll go to Chillie.
It's been pretty crazy because Monster Hunter's kind of like dialed down. One of the reasons I haven't been able to come to the show like the first couple of times was because we had Monster Hunter Stories release, and you know that took up a lot of my time. I was playing through that. That was a lot of fun. It's kind of like, imagine Monster Hunter crosses over with Pokemon, and you can't, except it's good, unlike Pokemon. But yeah, that was what
Hot
happened.
Takes right at the start.
My wife kind of kidnapped me for some vacations, and then
That's
it's just been like hard to sync back up. But ever since then, you know, Monster Hunter kind of like dialed down a little bit. We're kind of in the content lull. We recently had a minor update to Rise and whatnot, but during that I was like, okay, I want to go back to my roots and explore and see how the MMO land is doing. So I played a lot of MMOs. I played Phantasy Star Online. Obviously, I've been keeping up with Final Fantasy XIV. I'm leveling my final job for the role quest, which is the Dragoon. I need a melee DPS.
Yeah, that's also good staging for Endwalker, where if you decide to go Reaper, you've got gear, you've got, you know, those share gear, so that's going to be a huge bonus. Please continue.
Yeah, so I did that in 14. Then I went ahead and I played, like I said, Phantasy Star Online. I played Bless Unleashed, played Elder Scrolls Online, and also got back and played some more Guild Wars 2, just to kind of see what the MMO landscape has to offer now that kind of like World of Warcraft's been bleeding a lot of people, and there's a lot of other MMOs that are kind of like picking up these players. Obviously Final Fantasy XIV more so than any of the other ones because of the Asmongold effect kind of, but it's been interesting to see how much this whole situation contributed to just there being more stuff happening around the MMO space, and it's been really cool. Been having a really good time with that.
I want to come back to the Asmongold effect, so be sure to like put that in the back of your mind. But I'm going to go to Chillie. How are things going with you? Chat wants to know if that's a new poop hat. If you guys are listening to the MP3 of this, know that Chillie's got a signature poop hat representing the She Heals I Tank podcast, guys. An amazing podcast for Final Fantasy XIV. Chillie, floor is yours, sir.
Oh yeah, it's not a new poop hat. I had it bought for the last episode of the show, but it's newish, I guess. It's only been used twice-ish. But no,
it's not a regular poop hat.
No, I do have my Christmas poop hat ready for the end of the year, so I'm happy for that. But anyway, I'm really excited to be on. I've been playing a lot of Final Fantasy 1, actually. I've played through that again due to the HD remasters, the pixels. My chat forced me to do all white mages, which made the run a little bit longer than normal because
what a great idea.
White mage has no offensive attacks until the end of the game. So I had to hit everything with a hammer for the entire game.
I have never thought of that. That is such an interesting idea. It's kind of in a way of Twitch plays, but obviously like you're streaming the content. Have you created highlights of that?
No, there's no highlights. I wish I had.
Oh, dude. Oh, guys, you got to follow Chillie on his channel. I honestly now have this FOMO of the fact that I didn't even know that happened. Now that's what I want. All white mage run. All right, I digress. Continue on. What else has been going on in your world, dude?
And I guess also with the Asmongold effect, and because I like Chocobo racing, I watch his streams regularly. I've actually been late on my streams by a little bit because I'm too busy watching him. Not by a lot, but like, you know, if he's in like a run and he's about to win, and I'm like, a minute or two. But no, because of his Chocobo racing and because I love Chocobo racing, I've been trying to get the perfect Chocobo, which I've got very close to. I'm currently at 4. I've got 4 stars and 1 star right now. So just a bit more breeding and I'll eventually be able to get the perfect Chocobo. So I'm excited about that. Nice. And because I hate myself a little bit, I've gone back into Eureka for the 3rd time on a different character.
I need to go there.
I
want to
literally
get
have
like Paladin gear.
I literally have the same bucket list. So being that I have everything leveled in Final Fantasy XIV, I guess I'll just kind of jump in for me a little bit. I'm almost done with my first relic in Final Fantasy XIV ever.
Oh, you've never done a relic before?
I've done them. I just say, this is stupid. And I'm like, why am I doing this for glamour? And I don't know whatever combination it is, but the Zadnor, the Boja, like all of this is like Brian's accoutrement. Like this is just exactly how I connect, because I love feeling multiple boxes at the same time. So I specifically held off on Zadnor until I was ready to do that step, so that I was grabbing like this, I was doing this other thing, finishing the story, literally just having a great time with the content. And then all of a sudden I look up, I'm like, oh man, I'm only like 15% away of finishing this big step. And now I'm on the final step, which is like the level 70 dungeons. And so this is just, or I could go into Del Rey and, you know, all that stuff. But like, honestly, I'm just thrilled. And then I team up with Todd and we've been doing Savage raids. So I haven't been doing Savage. Julie is not pregnant. And this is what happens when we're not about to have another baby. Like I get stuff done in video games, guys. I get it done and it's a good time. We're having fun. And then all in all, like, I'm not saying I'm back in Destiny. I have a hard, like, I feel Destiny has this hook in me for like 2 months out of the year, but obviously the newest season with crossplay is here. That's something that I've been enjoying and been connected into. So I'm having a fun time with that, just kind of diving back, easing myself back into it. But I honestly feel kind of nice because I don't feel like I got to cover it for content. So it's not like this pressure to like, oh, I got to get to the top and I got to make guides and things like that. I was like, no, I'm just going to shoot some aliens. I'm going to have some PvP fun and I'm going to wait for Endwalker. Go ahead.
Do you play on PC or on console?
On everything. It's cross-play, cross-save. So I have it on Steam, Xbox, Stadia. Means I have it everywhere.
So you play everywhere with controller, like even when you're on PC, you're still playing with controller. Yeah.
Delete keyboard and mouse, man. This is the GOAT right there.
Good God. I think it even has a keyboard on it. What the hell?
Dude, that's right, man. Like, so this is we're not sponsored in any way because people don't want to work with me. That's fine. I don't care. The people who do offer a lot of money, but I'm not going to advertise for them. And I could give you 3 guesses and you only need one.
Raid Shadow Legend.
Yeah. So just note, I turned down around $2,000 a month to not promote those guys.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So anyway, like one day, I was
like, a lot of channels. Maybe just promote it, but put it on one of the channels with like.
Nah, dude, it's not about the money. It's
about sending a message.
You go work with those other YouTubers. This one's not buying. But no, so I got like a chat pad. I got the Elite Series 2, not sponsored. And this is my favorite controller. They are actually making a new Master Chief one, and I was slightly tempted, but then at the end of the day, I was like, I don't need it.
I think that's isn't it like 200 bones or something?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah, but it has a 40-hour battery charge, wireless battery. I can just set it down in a dock and it charges, so it's like it's always ready for me. Here's my ending critique review. See, I could you can change out the knobs. If I could make one change, I'd make a lesser version of this and take away the ability to take these daggum things off, because as a parent, this is a literal nightmare. The remote charging is a blessing, but then all of a sudden, like if I take this anywhere outside this room, literally I'll come back and there's like no knobs, nothing on it. I'm like and then it's like these are small parts. I'm like, oh God, please don't try to eat those, children. So that's my parent review for the Elite Series 2. So it's a great controller. Just don't let your kids touch it.
Oh wait. Before we move too far away from the Eureka stuff,
yeah,
you both said you were interested in it. in a little bit at least. Okay, what I will say is, if you want to do it take your time, and you want to just take your time and enjoy it, unlike what I've done where I've been crazy because I have to beat it before Endwalker, do your challenge log. Just go in, do your challenge log and leave. And the challenge log is just kill like 60 of a certain enemy of multiple different enemies. And that's it. And then you'll level up really fast. I mean, really fast.
The challenge log was a really good addition. The one thing for Eureka that I think would be just a huge send-off, like a huge help, is if they let you level like they let you level in Boja. So people who were like 61 and up.
Amazing.
And the counter argument comes into like, oh, that'd kill Heaven on High. And I don't think so. I think as long as you give players options, you can adjust that. You can say, well, this is this, like when people are going to min-max, I can't help those people. Like we shouldn't treat the min-maxers like the majority. They're going to do what they always do no matter what. But if you give players options, I think that would help breathe life into it as an option. Go ahead, Chillie.
And you have to hit 70 with one job to get into Eureka.
Right.
You have to be 70 to get in. So
yeah, same thing with Boja. So it's like there's that requirement, but then it lets you step back use that as a gap content.
Did they ever enable Eureka for blue mages like people wanted?
No.
Oh man,
I want to see that though. That's something I really would love to see how that would impact
poor
that content.
blue mages, dude.
I guess it's maybe to protect the Baldician arsenal. What do you think, Chillie?
I mean, they could just lock off BA, but I guess that would be. Well, yeah, that would be because BA's in it itself. So I don't know because you don't queue up for it. So maybe there's no way for them to lock them off. So maybe that's why. Maybe they let them into the first 3 stages of Eureka, but lock them off from the last one. Because you need to be in high datas to do BA. Because for BA, you kill an NM called Ovra, if I'm rightly. Once that notorious monster is dead, portals then appear around the map, and then you click on that portal to get in. It's why there was a lot of drama when BA first came out, because people were making pre-made parties outside and using Discord to organize it. But you had to go into Eureka, kill the NM, run to your portal, but because it's a public instance, there'll be other people that would then run to your portal and click it, meaning that there's a chance for randomers to take the portals. They call it stealing, which technically I guess it is to their viewpoint, but to that randomer, they just went in because it was there.
There's a portal. I'm going in.
Yeah.
Portals are fun.
Oh man, it's something that I want. I would love to see Blue Mage added to Eureka. I think ultimately that would end up being a something that'll be interesting to see, because if Blue Mage is always trailing behind, more content for it I think would be ultimately better. I'd love to see Blue Mage as an option for Palace of the Dead and Heaven on High. However, there's obviously the solo challenge.
That would be a little bit broken.
Oh yeah. Well, Blue Mage breaks everything, right?
They could easily deny it the challenge.
Yeah, just deny them the title or something, and boom, done.
100%.
I think that's fair.
100%.
Yeah, and so say congratulations on E9S as well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. If you guys don't know, just cleared E9S last night with Todd. We have him coming up on the podcast for the Crystal Core Radio, which will actually be at 2:00 today. So if you guys are subscribed to Ginger Gaming Radio, be sure to do that. Before we transition to a topic that both of you guys alluded to, I do want to say, if you guys are watching right now on Ginger Prime, top link in the description is for Ginger Gaming Radio. Love it if you watch and support over there, because this time next week, the podcast will only be on Ginger Gaming Radio. So be sure to go and check it out. Follow on that channel. And then you won't miss a live show and be able to come in like this and have these kind of conversations. So that's the last plug for it in today's show, because I do want to talk about what Rory you brought up. The Asmongold effect. The Asmongold effect. I actually made a banner for this while we're all chatting. I was like, perfect. Let's segment this podcast up logically. How has the Asmongold effect been perceived by you? Have you benefited from it at all? And what's your overall thoughts?
I haven't benefited from it at all, and I'm actually kind of upset at everyone, because I was talking I was talking to Final Fantasy XIV since like 2019, making videos telling people about how amazing it is. And not that many people followed me into 14. And then suddenly this guy, people barely know him. I think he's kind of bald too. And then all of a sudden he comes around and is like, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna give Final Fantasy 14 a try. You know, it's not gonna be that big a deal. And then he does it, and you see like one of the biggest upticks in Final Fantasy 14. Suddenly you see like a lot of streamers, like particularly if you're talking about like hardcore raiders in Final Fantasy 14, that I think we're probably averaging around 500 to like 600 viewers, something like that. Suddenly they're like in the 2000s, 4000s. You're like, holy crap. I'm super happy about it though, obviously, because like it's nice to see Final Fantasy 14 finally get the recognition it deserves. Because a lot of people, they just didn't give the game a shot because they were way too invested in World of Warcraft. Mm-hmm. And when I say Final Fantasy 14, I can say almost any other MMO. Like people would not even consider like Guild Wars 2 or ESO or even some of the free-to-play options like Phantasy Star Online or something like that. People would just like not even consider it because they're super invested into World of Warcraft. So in a way, Asmongold did open the floodgates to people just kind of like, oh, I guess it's okay for me to stop playing this game for a little bit and go check out other stuff. And that other game that he's playing seems pretty cool. Let's go check that out. But like a lot of people left for Final Fantasy 15, there's a lot of people that maybe already know that 14 is not for them because 14 is very much a story heavy game. And sure, you can skip it. Like you see a lot of the hardcore raiders, like I think Limit Max and a lot of the people that raid with him, they kind of like skip the story and they're still really enjoying themselves, which is fine. It goes to the point, like I believe you and Chris talked about this at length in the past about how Chris skipped and it's still, you know, it was a great experience for him nonetheless, because it's not just about the story, even though the story is amazing and it has, you know, it's one of the focal points of the game. The raids are also really good. And that's something that I've also said. I believe that the raids in 14 are actually better than World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft's raids just happen to be a little bit more immersive because they have like the whole dungeon, like you have alliance raids and stuff like that. Most of the World of Warcraft raids are kind of like that, and that gives you more immersion. But like for actually fighting and progressing, I think 14 is way better and way more fun. And a lot of people are kind of like discovering that, and it's cool. Now, obviously, there's also situations like Quinn, where he kind of like,
how is that a situation? How is Quinn even relevant to the conversation? Right? It's like, hi, and it's so funny that so many that so many people got mad at that situation. It's like clearly he did this thing, fine, and then he didn't like this thing. But
it's like it's fine. I think it's perfectly
fine. It's perfectly fine. But that's the whole thing. It's like, and then he just like doubled down and just decided to continue to poke at the bear. And he benefited from it. And that's the irony in all of this. It's like the fact that we're literally talking about his reaction to not playing the game, to saying he didn't like the game that he didn't play, and then decided to perceive that people felt like they had to defend 14. Like, that's the thing that frustrates me, and I want to get back to your thoughts here, but the one thought I have on all that is the thing that frustrates me is that people still think Final Fantasy 14 needs some kind of defense. It's literally the best effing game in my mind that has existed in a long time. We can always like tier list stuff and whatever, right? But I think it's silly that people think 14 needs to be defended. Anyway, go ahead, Rory.
Yeah,
I was just going to add in here. Can I add in?
Yes, please.
I feel like the main issue with him was the fact that he skipped and then was pissy about it. I feel like if he'd skipped and said he didn't like it, I don't think it would have been too bad. I feel like there'd still been a lot of complaints because he skipped story and so many people love this. Yeah, the story's great, but if you want to skip the story, I don't care. It's your time. You do what you want. You have fun.
He could have come out and said Smurfs are blue, and that's literally the equivalent of what he said with I skipped and I didn't like the game. Like it's not shocking to me. Maybe it's shocking to others. Maybe I'm just like in this weird isolated like I like this game and I've covered it for 11 years kind of echo chamber. But it's literally the equivalent of coming out and saying corn can be a grain or a vegetable. Like those are things that is true. Like, oh, okay, I'm not surprised by this. And the fact that it's gotten so much airtime, it's like, what is happening? Well, who cares? Who cares what this guy did? I never heard of him before, and I'm happy. I don't care. Yeah, I'm sure he's probably a decent dude. Anyway, go ahead, Chillie.
And when it comes to Asmongold, I feel like one of the things that I know he's one of the biggest streamers. I actually think he's been very smart with this. like ridiculously smart.
Oh, genius. Yeah.
Even if he's not thinking it himself, but I feel like he was playing the long game. Like, so many people for years were asking him to play Fantasy 14. Like, they would go, would you play Fantasy 14? It's like, nah, that's a weird game. Would you like play? Nah. Then suddenly he plays it. Now, he's had that 2 year, whatever, at least a year or two of people wanting him to go play the game. So with that, plus what's happening right now, I feel like he timed it so perfectly because of that.
I look at him more like the Joker. It's like, I'm a dog chasing cars. I wouldn't know what to do with one if I got it. I think it was more luck than necessarily planning. I think he's an intelligent individual, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But I think that what happened with the Final Fantasy XIV was a bit more luck than necessarily planning.
Casey chimes in and says, I miss the WoW raids, actually. Final Fantasy XIV ones and done feels shallow. It's odd to say as a big fan of 14. Do you guys feel or echo what Casey's talking about with the raids?
It's the immersion factor of it, I guess. It's the thing. That's the one thing that I feel World of Warcraft raids still have on it. Because like the only thing you can really compare a World of Warcraft raid to in 14 would be an Alliance raid, where you're actually going through a dungeon and you're killing mobs along the way, and then you have a couple of boss encounters, right? That's what a raid in WoW is. The one and done that he's talking about the trials and the actual raids where it's like you boot in, there's an arena, you fight the boss, you leave. And it's like, I get it. I get that sense of like, because like it feels very, how should I explain it? Like segregated from the rest of the world. Like when you're going into raid, you're really going into an instance. There's not even, a lot of times there's not even like a physical representation in game of the space that you're going to. Right? Like, sure, you're doing the Eden raids, there's Eden over there, but like this is like a square. It's simply a square in the ground, and you fight in this square, and then after you're done, that square might as well not exist. There's a couple of them that are a little bit different, like you're fighting on top of Eden and whatnot, but most of the arenas, like, it's this one square that exists just for this fight. But in a way, that frees them to do some crazy stuff with the fight, so I'm kind of okay with it. But if I had to pick one or the other, I'd still pick 14 because they just do better encounters, in my opinion.
What do you think, Chillie?
If I had the choice between, I like again, the immersion's nice, but I feel like once I've done the WoW raid once, I don't want to go back because it's such a long progression and the raids are so long. While with 14, I don't mind progressing and clearing the raids because it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, you know what I mean, per tier.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like I have to put away hours of time to try and go through trash, boss, trash, boss, trash. I just want to fight the boss, get my loot, and leave. That's what I want to do.
The thought that comes to my mind from that phrase from Casey in this regards is that like it comes down to like incentive. Like for me, I found new incentive in parsing myself and trying to improve my play. And so that ended up bringing a whole new life to the raids. But that's essentially something me violating the terms of service.
How dare you?
How dare I?
Yeah.
Yoshi P is like, we look to the parsers and the min-maxers so we can see we're doing it right, but don't talk about it in game. And so when it comes down to it, it's like I've been doing the older raids because of the step that I was on for the relic, and so I like how they're able to look back at some of this older content. I think that there's a couple changes. I've talked about this at length, and it becomes a big debate. Like it was a bigger debate. I was surprised by some of the pushback. Because to me, it just seems like a simple idea. But when I do the older content, the thing I miss is my toolkit. Like, I love doing content at level 80. I like it at level 70. And then now at level 60 and below, it's like, man, I wish I had my kit. I wish I had my full set of abilities. And then I've gotten used to that. So I found myself running less and less old content. But the game is filled with a wide breadth of it. And so, personally speaking, like when it comes to even the raids, there's a reward structure that gets people going in for the loot, for the gear, but at some point that becomes not as valuable to the end game player because they get that gear, and then essentially is what should keep you going back. And I don't have an answer for that on this podcast, but personally speaking, I like how they bring that content back in connection to other content. I would just personally, I think that the only thing I find frustrating is the lacking of the skills at level 80, especially if I'm working on a level 80 relic. I'm now running level 70 stuff and I don't have that. I'm missing 10 levels of of gear and also working on, maybe my rotation and things like that. That's just me. And I know I'm oversimplifying the idea of it all.
I've actually been asked this. I think it was even yesterday or the day before in my stream. Like, how do I feel about doing older content, and should they allow you to just bring your full kit to an older dungeon? And really, the only downside that I could think of that happening is because you can adjust the potency of spells, right? You can scale it down. They probably do that for when you have a certain spell, but you don't have like a certain passive at a higher level that gets adjusted down. So adjusting the potency of spells is doable, which means you can have a level 80 character with his full kit running Sastasha and not be overpowered. The only downside that I see to that is it could depending on how sensitive people are to spoilers, you could be spoiling abilities that this person hasn't seen yet. But I don't really think that's a big deal, right? Like, who cares if suddenly you just see like a big explosion of AoE that you don't even know how that happens, but it doesn't really matter. Like, who cares?
I think it's more advertising to the job itself. Like, what is that? Oh, and you're like, I get that at 74. Motivation. Where it used to be where you would see like the phrase gear lust being used, you'd have skill lust. Like, oh my gosh, I can earn that, I can learn that. And the mathematician in me, from the balancing perspective, says, what does a white mage do in healing in a dungeon run? What do they do in damage in a dungeon run? And then you would look at your floor and your ceiling, and you would just make sure that from scaling, they couldn't outpace the cap of what it would be if they didn't have those skills. So those skills would all be like benediction. Yeah, it wouldn't function like a full heal, but it might put out 200 HP or 300 HP, in terms of how it gets scaled, because the healer at this level, as we've charted the numbers, like that is what the dungeon was balanced for. However, the counter argument, even to like the fear of skills being kind of added, is that time and time again, every expansion, the older content becomes easier regardless. Even if they don't have the abilities, like we've already kind of the scaling, how it's working in game is a little bit kind of broken. And I want to see if when we get the stat squish, if that ends up being something that's feels a little bit more challenging, a little bit more balanced in terms of the older content.
Someone in the chat brought up the one issue that will come up from UCP is that 1,000 people will get vote kicked if they want scaled from 80 and the more tools. Like, the reason why they won't do Blue Mage. Yeah, I guess that makes sense, I guess, because that means if you do a roulette, and there'll be some people that'll be like, oh, you don't have flair? Vote abandoned?
Those people exist already.
I mean, I don't really see that happening in the 14 community, though. Right? For regular roulettes. Because like my experience with regular roulettes, at least, has always been extremely positive. Like, if someone makes a mistake, people go out of their way to like guide them, like, hey, no, listen, here's what you did wrong. Here's this mechanic, this, that. At least that's been my experience when I was leveling up. So I don't really see it. Not to mention you get more like of the tokens and stuff if there's someone that's new in there with you. So
yeah, but if your abilities are, even if they're scaled down, some jobs don't have AoEs at low level, which I don't want. Yeah. I personally don't think that scaling everything down would be great because of the balance issues. Mm-hmm. But I would like them to scale down some of the AoE moves so that, or at least lower the level of the moves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone has an AoE at level 15.
That's the other side of the coin. That's the other side of the coin, because where I felt like as we've progressed in level, they've deleted things. So I felt like the earlier jobs are the ones that suffer the most, because some of those skills end up being pushed further up the chain. And so yes, to 100% AoE a little bit sooner. Also off the global cooldown just a little bit sooner. Like by the time you're going into level 15, like give something to kind of help with that rotation just a little bit more overall, because like when I go and run that content, like there's nothing, I don't need XP. Like maybe the other side of the coin outside of skills and changing that up would be some kind of reward structure. We asked Yoshi P about this in the past. The thing I want to see would be a kind of glamour level, like just some post-game leveling that has no power progression to it. Just like hey, you got another level of XP. Congrats. Here's the treasure coffer and you can open it up. And maybe there's a mount. I don't know. But like something in that regards where XP doesn't lose value, because then I think I would suffer through a leveling roulette. But once I have everything at cap, like I don't touch leveling, I don't touch any of those things anymore, and it's disappointing because there is some really good content that's locked into the earlier game.
Yeah, I was just gonna bring up earlier with that when you're talking about low levels not having an AOE. Let me tell you, as someone that has recently been leveling a Dragoon, that's a serious freaking problem.
Did you like your AoE at level 40?
It was amazing.
You're like, oh my goodness.
I can actually AoE now. Wow, this is impressive. It's completely changed my gameplay.
But when it comes to like leveling down stuff, I got Black Mage to 80 a couple of months ago, and I now refuse to play Black Mage in any roulette because I know that I will have to take big brains to remember the fights, because Black Mage changes its roulette at 50, 60, 70, and 80. So any roulette I go, I have to then change my entire play style.
Yeah.
And I don't like that.
Oh, man. No, that's actually a fun little lively conversation that broke out there, because there's so many interesting ways. It'll be interesting to see what Endwalker does as we go to level 90. How's that going to ultimately feel? And I think at the end of the day, like, I can't speak to the WoW raids, back to Casey's original kind of point, because I couldn't even get to that part in WoW going into it this year in 2021. And, at the end of 2020, I was like, it was fun playing with friends, but then I quickly found with phasing and everything that it was just like, I'm just playing the single player game. I'm not seeing anybody else in the game in the world. And everybody's talking about how like, oh, Shadowlands, it's so amazing. And it's like, is it? Or they just bought into the hype? And then we see, and this kind of comes all back around to, this is gonna make a fun like highlight to kind of bring full 360 back to the Asmongold effect. Here he is, and I would say he's been the last bastion of kind of this wall, this hurdle, this barrier to Final Fantasy. And him, as big as he is and as well known as he is within the WoW community, coming into 14 and actually having a good time, like that in and of itself was like, oh, okay, I'll give this game a look. I've always people put up a mental barrier. They've already had so much invested. And then beyond Asmongold coming to play 14, then you see so many bad things about Blizzard news and more just coming out. And honestly, it's really interesting for me as a content creator. I don't like making negative videos. And it's always funny because it's when I love when I get accused of that I just make negative videos. It's like, okay, like my 2 a year, like the algorithm, you probably only watch negative videos, because like that's the conclusion I come up with. It's like, perhaps you and your algorithm knows this is the only videos you'll watch of mine. But I put out, I didn't like WoW. Like I played it, I tried it, and at the end of the day, I'm going to blame myself. I did this in the spring. That video has popped off recently. And a lot of people are like, oh, look at this, another content creator hopping on the train. I'm like, check the date, brosif. It's like, this was back in the spring before all of this happened. And then essentially, like I was talking with Chris about it, it's like, I don't know why people feel like my video, like it's a lot of like WoW simps. A lot of people coming in, they're like, no, WoW's best days are ahead of it, and et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, in my mind, I'm like, I cannot fathom that actually being a reality. I can't argue, because I asked this a question of Syncweaver when he was on Crystal Core Radio. Now I'm going to ask it to Rory.
Mm-hmm.
If you were a new player, why would you go play WoW in 2021? Like, what if you've never played WoW before? Why should a player go and play the game today, especially with all the landscape of MMOs and all what new MMOs are about to drop on us?
Why should a player? I mean, it's very hard for me to speak from the perspective of a new player, because, I've played World of Warcraft. There was a point in my life where I played nothing but World of Warcraft.
How many years?
How many years? I don't know. Because I came into World of Warcraft shortly before the Burning Crusade expansion. So I was still in vanilla. I leveled in vanilla until like level 56. I don't know exactly how many years, but it must have been like 2007 or something when I came in, or maybe a little bit earlier. I don't know the exact dates. And then I played all the way through until Cataclysm, which I don't know, it's probably 2013 or 12. So it was a long time that I played nothing but World of Warcraft, right? And I really enjoyed my time there. Like those were like the golden days of World of Warcraft. Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King, those were the golden days of WoW, pretty much. And vanilla, probably. I didn't experience much of vanilla, but that was probably it as well. And the thing is, ever since then, Blizzard's been kind of like making a lot of mistakes with the game. So the reasoning for someone to go into World of Warcraft now in 2021 has to be a social reason, which, to be honest, that's the reason why I went to play Shadowlands. Because I have a friend of mine that I used to play with back in those Wrath of the Lich King days. And before I even bought Shadowlands, I had a conversation with him and I asked, because he was in a guild, and I was like, do you have a spot for a tank in your guild so that I can go and tank in raids? And he said yes. And that's the reason why I bought Shadowlands. So the only reason for someone to play World of Warcraft is social. If you have friends, or if I guess you can go there out of morbid curiosity, but even then, I was super disappointed because when I went into Shadowlands, whereas before I had played World of Warcraft, like I came back to it every now and then to check out how things were going, but never really grabbed me, right? But before I didn't have like a comparison point on the level of Final Fantasy XIV, but after I went to Shadowlands, it was already like post me doing everything in Shadowbringers. And what I quickly realized, like, this questing experience is complete ass. It's just ass. And anyone who says otherwise is just wrong, and they don't have a point of comparison. I actually made a video talking about that, and a lot of people are like, what are you talking about? This is the best questing experience we've seen in years. And I was like, really? This is terrible. Like, this is so bad. The story is in complete shambles. There was parts of the story that was out of order, because the way that they progressed, I'm not even joking, like it was literally out of order. You would see events take place during your story that then, as they advance their renown system and whatnot, then you would see events that should have taken place before the events that you had witnessed in the story. And I was like, dude, this makes no goddamn sense. How can any say that? It was ridiculous, and I couldn't take it seriously. So the only thing that I wanted to do there was raid. I just wanted to raid and do Mythic Plus, which is the one thing I wish Final Fantasy XIV would do, is like some Mythic Plus like system. Because Mythic Plus is one of the things that I like the most in World of Warcraft. It's like, imagine just a dungeon, except it keeps scaling up. I think you've asked Yoshi P about this question.
Yeah,
as
he
well,
said if he had WoW's budget, and it's like, yeah, absolutely.
See, I would not like Mythic Plus in Final Fantasy XIV at all. I feel like well, as long as it doesn't affect your tomes.
Yeah, it doesn't have to.
Grind, because then I'm okay with it. Then it's optional content with maybe slightly better gear, than maybe about the equivalent to crafted gear. But my issue is if it's tome based, if you get your weekly tomes from it, the great thing about tomes is that it doesn't take long to cap. You can get it done pretty fast. And I feel like the Mythic Plus would really skewer the balance of it. And I'm not a big fan.
I mean, it's just, the thing is, if you're thinking like in terms of the vault, which is something completely ridiculous, then I can't believe that some people actually champion that stupid ass system. Like, if you're thinking in terms of that, then yeah, I don't want the vault anywhere near Final Fantasy. That was so bad. Do you know what the vault is, Brian?
Now go ahead and explain it to me.
Imagine you have like a list of tasks that you're supposed to do every week, right? And then every time that you do one of those tasks, the vault unlocks one piece of loot, and you could have like up until like, I don't know if it was 12 or 9 pieces of loot available to you by doing Mythic Plus, raiding, PvP, and pretty much all of the activities that are in the game. But the cool thing about that vault is that you unlock all of these 12 items or whatever, but you get to pick literally one.
Yeah. No, I would say I'm also for the vault in a way, because I feel like it was a great way if you were unlucky with drops. Like, I don't like exactly how it was done, but I like the idea in theory. Like, if you did your raid for the week and you get nothing from it, then you can at least get something. So the idea of the vault was a good idea, in my opinion. It's just done poorly.
My ideal, and I do want to like shout out to Black Sky Legion talking about, hey, we're going to be talking about New World here in a minute. Yes,
we will.
And that's going to be coming up, because honestly, that's what all of this seems to be building up to. Also, I want to I'm going to bring Lost Ark into that conversation, because it's an interesting thing as we look to new MMOs. But as far as it goes, when we talk about M+, my ideal version of M+ is combining the deep dungeon system with our dungeon system, right? Where in Heaven on High and Palace of the Dead, like those are unique to that. What I would love to see is like being able to take the existing dungeons, which we're going to probably have 100 in Endwalker, and be able to say, great, imagine if like they took that as a part of that system, and it doesn't affect progress towards the raid. One of the things I hear a lot of stress, a lot of negative in M+ is that all these things became chores that you had to do in order to be competitive in the game. And I think that just it works until it doesn't. It just builds stress. But what I like about Heaven on High and Palace of the Dead, and the only thing I would want to change is goes back to my missing skills. Like I'm enjoying challenging that content with friends, seeing how far we can get, and it ends up just being fun on, you know, in and of itself, right? And so to add in like saying, hey, we didn't get a deep dungeon piece of content in Shadowbringers, but in Endwalker, what if they're like, hey, but instead of like these just boxed off floors, it's literally mix and match dungeon. Like, oh, boom, we're going to bring this in, we're going to bring this in. And then it continues to scale and get more difficult. And honestly, in my mind, it never has an ending. It literally can just go, and it just pulls from the vast resources they've already created and just puts a new spin on them. And that's my ideal version. But again, it doesn't, like, you don't have to do that in order if you want to do the Savage Raid, because I think essentially the more things that you make required in terms of the progress ends up working for the short term, but in the long term ends up building resentment among the player base. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, that all sounds really good to me.
In terms of like it being a chore, though, I would point out that I didn't really think that it's like if you're trying to do the objectives for the vault, then yeah, Mythic Plus can be a chore. But the thing is, for someone like me that likes doing Mythic Plus, I never looked at that as a chore. That was actually a fun part of Shadowlands for me, is getting together with my friends and doing Mythic Plus, because we all enjoyed the challenge and doing those dungeons. The problems were everything else around it, like the maw dailies that you had to do to get a little bit of this resource that then didn't go into socketing your weapons, the Torghast thing that you had to do to get Soul Lash to get your legendaries, and all of these other systems around, like the anima, the conduit power, all of these different systems they put in there. Those were the problems. Those were like what was actually a chore to do, because the Mythic Plus itself is like, it's just a dungeon, and you could get the rewards not even that hard. Like if you just want to get one item from Mythic Plus, I think it was like 5 Mythic Plus or something a week. It's not even that much. I don't know. I didn't think it was a chore, is what I'm saying. But the idea that you had, though, I never thought about it. It reminds me of systems that I've seen in other games. Like there was a game that I played, Dragon's Crown, which like the end game of that was it would just like repeat the levels just like you're saying. And then it would have like a breaking point in between where all of the heroes would gather around a campfire. You'd get like food buffs. You would cook stuff and whatnot. And then after that, they would just throw you into another random level that would be like scaling up constantly. And the thing is, it would increase like the drop chances for good items and stuff like that. So you'd be incentivized to keep like running it instead of stopping, right? It's like, oh, you can keep running and going. And it's always more and more and more, right? I think that would actually be a really cool system, because there, like you said, there's a breadth of content when it comes to the game. And that is cool, because you'd be using, you know, hey, let's take players to Sastasha. Let's take players to those level 70, the Temple of the Fist, or whatever it is that I would imagine 80% of the player base has never even been there. Right? The Temple of the Fist dungeon. Like how many players have never been to the Temple of the Fist?
It's such a,
it's a cool dungeon.
It's a dungeon.
It's so visually impressive.
Exactly.
Many corals. That's the point. So many corals.
if I wasn't like someone who just loves doing dungeons, I probably would have never been there either. It's just the thing is, I like going through the list and I'm like, oh, which dungeon haven't I done? Okay, let's go do this one now, and then do this one. I want to tank all the dungeons, all of them, because that's my favorite con. It's easier to organize a group of like 4 people than to organize a group of 8 people. And that's why I like that content so much. It's a lot more bit-sized. You go in there, you do your thing, and then you're done.
Yeah. So let's transition into kind of our final topic for today's show. We've obviously just come off the heels of Gamescom. One of the things I was specifically looking for was Lost Ark information, and I felt like we came out of that hungry. Unless there was, I've scoured the news sites and Reddit every morning thus far for new information about that, and it was nothing. And we asked the question about, will Lost Ark compete with New World, because both of these games are published by Amazon Game Studios. Lost Ark rumored to have a beta coming out pretty soon. No official release date, but still targeting the fall, while at the same time New World having its release date pushed back to the 28th, and in an open beta, which I think is a genius idea, dropping here in just next week. So Rory, what's your takeaways, having played, obviously Lost Ark being something that we've been watching for a long time overseas. I've played it. I don't know about you, but
I haven't.
Floor is
played
yours.
It.
Oh, dude, I think you're in for a treat, man. I think you're in for a treat.
That's the thing. It's like I don't like when I have to jump. Like I can totally do it. The whole thing of jumping through hoops to join a Korean server. And now I think there's even like a Russian version or something. You can probably like get a Russian a Russian social security number or Russian postal code, right? But the thing is, I don't like doing that because I feel like I'm going around too many loops. Like there's not enough games for me to play, right? So I'm very curious about Lost Ark because of the fact that it's almost got like that, it's got that isometric feel of like a Diablo. And on top of it, it's got a class that's the Gun Lancer, which is a weapon that you don't see that often in video games, Gun Lance, right? So that's one of the reasons why I'm super excited about that game. And it looks like it's going to be really fun. The animations in that game are god tier, but you are right. There's a lot of questions about this game, and particularly because I think one point, I'm not sure if I brought it up in this podcast in the past or not, but basically this game's been in the East for such a long time that now that it's eventually coming to the West, I feel like the hype around it has been significantly diminished because a lot of content creators even made content around it when it was still in the East, which is going to make it hard for it to recapture that hype, which I think is potentially one of the things that they're considering about their release window here. They're like, oh, is this going to capture players' attention? Is it not going to capture players' attention? We just don't know. And then with New World coming out as well, both being published by Amazon, it's going to be weird. I still think that Lost Ark's audience is different because New World has open world PvP. I don't think Lost Ark has open world PvP. I think the PvP in Lost Ark is going to be more like instance based or something like that, like some battlegrounds or arena or.
I was never attacked
like
in when I played over in the Korean server, so it very well could have it. I just never ended up getting attacked, but I do know that it does have PvP, so I haven't experienced that yet for myself, and that's something that I'm very curious about. One of the things for me, like you kind of bring it up, like. It was, oh, what is this game? Oh, this is cool. Oh, this is how I can go play it today. So I went and played it. I was like, yeah, this game's a lot of fun. I think Diablo's in trouble. I think Blizzard's going to have to respond to this. Obviously, history being history, they haven't. And now it's fine. And then, but it got to the point where I was like, is this even going to come to the West? And now it is. And it's like, I just want more timing because there's a big game that I like called Endwalker that's happening in November, and if Lost Ark's like we're coming out November 17th, well, I guess I will play you in the spring. They did.
They said
November
fall, though, so.
Fall doesn't end until like December 20th or something.
Fall doesn't start till December.
December 21st is when I count winter. Summer doesn't end until fall starts on September 21st. That's how I count days. I go by the solstice.
But yeah, and then it's like we have New World, and the thing about New World that I feel like New World has a problem, and that is what are people going to do, like let's say after the game's been out for a month? Because what I remember from the first alpha, and in this alpha I didn't engage the latest alpha, I didn't engage in PvP at all because I didn't have that much time to play. But what little I played of it, it still seemed like it was around the same problem with, there's going to be one faction that's going to become dominant. And then after that faction becomes dominant in a server, because it's going to be on a per server basis, like some servers are going to be dominated by Marauders, other servers are going to be dominated by something else. And it's like, why would a new player that joins this server play a different faction so that they can get taxed more, so that they can get rolled over in PvP? That's the problem that I think that game is going to have, because there's 3 factions. There's most likely going to be faction imbalance, and sure, PvP is
there's no such thing as faction imbalance in New World, and I'm gonna blow your mind. Go ahead.
Okay, but yeah, that's one of the things that I'm concerned about, and this is like, what are people going to be doing after that first month, right? After you've leveled up, you've seen the content, like how are they going to be expanding upon it in a meaningful way? Those are my questions. And I don't know, because I haven't seen enough of the game to talk about it. Did you actually, considering that you played more, did you actually get to play the instances? Because I didn't level up enough to do the instances.
I don't know what I can share, but I've got certain things that I'm working on. I'm under NDA. So, not publicly. I haven't played the instances, so we'll see about that. That will be more information on that will be coming on the 28th of September. Honestly, I'm just go ahead.
Someone asked in one of the chats from. Sorry if I butcher your name.
Oh no, you're good.
Shredder Dave. Shredder Dave. Question is, how are they going to monetize Lost Ark? Extremely pay to win, if I'm rightly. I remember seeing a stream of yours a while back of Lost Ark. I think you used exit lag or something like that to play it.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember that, but I don't remember much. But yeah,
so Lost Ark is free to play. So I do want to get to that. Let me go ahead and answer that question because I want to come back to why I don't think there's a faction imbalance in New World. I'd love to get y'all's thoughts on that. But in terms of Lost Ark's monetization, it is a free to play. It has a cash shop. It is rated as the less pay to win version out there. The challenge when it comes to talking about monetization online, especially with a wide range of gamers, is that you and I and everybody will have variations of what is acceptable and what isn't. At the end of the day, it all comes down to trust. This is just like I just want to keep preaching this. Monetization, you can have the most pay to win game in the world, but if you trust and like that developer, you'll be fine supporting them. And I see people defending that once that trust and love of the game is there. If those two things don't exist, then it doesn't matter. Like I've seen people like rage about the bike mount in Final Fantasy XIV that gave an unfair advantage. Like everybody's going to find different ways that fit that need. And if you have trust and you've got a good game, at the end of the day, monetization is a balance in that. You can easily see a developer, a publisher, more or less, more than the developer, a publisher sitting down and actually abusing that trust, building the trust and then abusing it. And that's where I think you end up seeing a lot of frustration in games. Monetization is an important piece of the conversation because without it, we all recognize the games won't exist. And I think we all have a preferred model, but ultimately, like when you look at an economy, that is something that people adjust to. So when it comes to Lost Ark, you just need to educate yourself. In fact, Johnny Mac Games should be having a video, if he hasn't posted it already, going over if the game is pay to win and going over the cash shop for you guys. Educate yourself, because if nothing else, like you could, I go into PSO2. I know it has an optional sub. I know it has a cash shop. I know all these things. So when they come out with like really cool stuff in the cash shop, I'm not like, oh, how dare they? It's something that's not my preference. I don't financially engage in those systems. I choose to engage monetarily in a different way, but I wouldn't classify Lost Ark as pay to win, because having played it for like probably at least 6 months and enjoyed the game that much, I've never spent a dime on it. But that's my personality when it comes to cash shops. I just don't spend money on them. So you can sit here and say that a game is pay to win, and I'll never see it because I just don't care. Like I just like whatever. And then if they come out with something that I like something where an expansion or whatever, like I like that model overall. But at the end of the day, like the free to play model is unfortunately the future, and that's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah, unfortunately it is. And here's the thing too, which is like, we can all talk about cash shops until we're blue in the face, but basically, if you want to play an MMO, you're going to have to deal with There's not a single MMO out there that doesn't have a cash shop. It's just.
I think it was Brian that brought this up a while back. That I think the issue is, especially with the fact that we have to have cash shops, is because there has been not a sub price increase ever. MMOs cost the same as they've always done, which, consider the fact that everything else in life costs more. They need their extra funding somehow. Yeah, there's more players nowadays, but everything costs more.
There's not like when you look at an MMO subscription, you're competing against something like Game Pass and Netflix now. Like before, when there was like 2 MMOs or 3 MMOs that were kind of like, yeah, we can support this. WoW comes in, blows the roof off of what was possible, and then essentially since then we haven't really seen that kind of growth. Because other games, because you're not just competing in this, in your lane anymore. You got, Fortnite, you got all this, and you have a whole generation. And that's one of the things I spend a lot of time with working with other parents, like one-on-one when it comes to their gaming, is that you got a whole generation of kids that have been trained on that you don't pay for these games anymore. You pay for them like the battle passes and all these things. So unfortunately, I feel like, people like might say it's a double standard, or sometimes like I have a difficult with this conversation because it is so nuanced about what is appropriate, what isn't, depending on your view. But the only lesson that I end up having to boil it down with is say, what are you going to do? We lost. Like the subscription model alone lost. The model is free to play. The model is these things. And it makes me sad. And it's like, and I have to be the guy, and the people are like, you're supporting it. I'm like, no, you're not hearing me. I'm trying to bring you to the reality, and it's not a beautiful one. It's one that, the subscription meant that there was a cap on the money you could spend. Now that's unlimited, and they're just raking it in. And the fact that we even get video games that don't have that aren't free to play, boggles my mind. Halo is free to play. Halo Infinity is free to play. Like, there's no way in heck that we'll continue to see like games come out that are like, this is what we are, and we're not going to charge you any more money. And anybody who does that is a marketing ploy, and I think that's going to switch. They'll start like that, and then they'll change. And the monetization that has me the most concerned is the person who changes. If you say that you're a subscription-based game, and then you're not a subscription-based game, and now you have all those things, like that in and of itself gives me more concern than somebody coming in saying we're a buy to play or we're a free to play, because then essentially it's established, and then I can choose whether I want to engage in that system or not. But when you take and you pull the rug out from under me, that's when I have problems. That's when I get frustrated, and that's where maybe a double standard comes into play.
Yeah, it's basically a situation where we are, like you said, we just need to be informed about the different cash shops of the different games and see how comfortable we are with each of them. So like an example here is, like I said, I recently played Phantasy Star Online 2 and Bless Unleashed, which are two free-to-play games. And whereas I'm pretty okay with the Phantasy Star Online 2 cash shop, because basically it's mostly cosmetic, and then there's a couple of experience boosters here and there. But even the experience boosters are not a big deal, because you can level up to like level 20 or something. So it's like, seems like a waste of money personally. And and when it comes to the cosmetic stuff, they actually give you like a free gotcha thing every time you log in, from which I've actually gotten some pretty good looking items, right? So I'm like, you can get some stuff for free, even if you're not like paying anything at all. And that seems like it's pretty fair to me, considering it's a free to play game. The reason I actually stopped playing that was completely different. But, it's all about you inform yourself about what the store does and whether or not you're okay with it. And that's all you can really do. There's nothing else to it. Because like you said, we lost. We basically lost. Well, like that's it.
And here's how I see that we can win again. Like, I don't think it's all settled down, but it's going to be very different from how it used to be. So we in the pre-show of this podcast, guys, subscribe to Ginger Gaming Radio if you want to see pre-shows. In the pre-show of this podcast, we started talking about Halo Infinity and their Battle Pass and how it does not expire, thus taking away a lot of the FOMO. I don't like the Battle Pass because of the FOMO. Because there's it's the same thing with Majora's Mask. It's the same thing with games that it's like, I just don't need that in my life, even if I had time. Like, I was a kid and Majora's Mask stressed me out, and that just like, all right, I'm just not going to play this Zelda game. And I didn't, and I was happier with it. And is whenever I like, even with Destiny, like, no, like the fact that their latest season is a 6-month long season, I'm like, okay, I can casually dip in. I'm not putting this artificial pressure on myself, because that's what it is. It's artificial pressure. Halo's changing the game, and I hope that everybody follows suit, because when you look at the evil of the loot box, and I use evil as a parent and training kids to sit here and just, play a slot machine for some BS cosmetic versus saying that cosmetic's $30, because that's actually the price of the cosmetic. That's what they want to charge. But the randomness, the RNG, basically equal and even out. They can make more, so they kind of even out. To the evolution of the Battle Pass having the FOMO where it expires. Like, I think the perfect model, or the best model that we can end up hopefully somewhat realizing its value, is the is the model of the battle pass with no expiration, because my problem, even still with the cash shop in a video game, is the instant gratification. It's the swipe card, get whatever. And I've said what I like about the battle pass and what I would ultimately like to see as a gamer and as a parent is that even if you purchase a cosmetic in the game, it's actually a cosmetic quest. Like, it gives you something that you have to then go do to then unlock the cosmetic. Yes, there's a monetization piece in front of that, but again, we're not paying subscriptions, and we're not paying in some cases for expansions and more. But at the end of the day, like, what I think about the battle pass is that it tells you exactly what you're going to get if you put the time into it, and without an artificial thing that says this is going to disappear in 90 days, forcing you to have to like grind this out. Because I know I could finish the Destiny 2 season probably in a month if I really committed. Easy enough time before it ever expired. I just don't engage with it because it does expire. But if it's like, oh, I can just go grind that out whenever I feel like it, all the better. And even the fact that we talked about, like, even New World adding in a battle pass option, that'd be huge for me. Like, but just don't let it expire. Like, I can equip the battle pass. It's like a reward track in Guild Wars 2, and I can just work on it on my own time and what is permitted. And I think ultimately that's what I hope for. Yes, we're not paying a subscription fee, but I'd happily put in my money and purchase battle passes that didn't expire, so that when I have lots of time, because time for, a parent ebbs and flows. Sometimes I got all kinds of time. Sometimes I got no time, and I can't predict that. And that's the fact that's why I hate the battle pass model as it exists today. And I hope Halo changes it. But what Chillie said about it being challenge based scares the crap out of me. Yeah. What do y'all guys think about that? Because I do want to get back to our New World faction balance.
I will say it really depends on how hard the challenges are. Like, if there's some really easy ones, and like some difficult ones that take some time, but they're difficult, but they're more of a grind that you're supposed to spend like a few weeks doing, rather than something you're supposed to burn out in one day, then that's not too bad. But as long as it's nothing ridiculously stupid, like, to do this challenge, you need to get 10,000 headshots with this gun upside down.
Oh, with a specific gun. Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
I just want to play with the guns I like.
Exactly.
That's where I stress out in Call of Duty. And I'm just done with Call of Duty. I just can't play. I can't do that game anymore. Anyway, I do want to say before we jump back into the PvP balance, Ian saying loot boxes will eventually be regulated in the name of protecting the children generally and adults with predisposition to addiction. This is, of course, a good thing since they're exploitative. The only thing I would advise, and this is going to be like, I'm not if you guys want to know my political affiliation, I'm angry. That's who I identify with. I honestly don't believe or trust that politicians, any side of it, actually give it like 2 coins. I would swear, but actually I can't, to out us. And at the end of the day, like, I've heard that argument from every side, like outside of loot boxes, that it's like, just wait until whatever. It's like, waiting on the government or any government to really do anything, it's like I might as well, like,
people need to understand when they talk about government interventions, like, listen, the government's going to intervene until they get their cut. That's literally what the government, like, you know how the government sent those letters out to like a bunch of I think they sent them to like 2K, the Activision Blizzard, and a bunch of other companies. They sent out a bunch of letters saying like, oh, we need you to rein in your predatory monetization. What those letters actually say is like, hey, you haven't been cutting us in. We want our goddamn cut, or we're going to make this harder for you. This is literally what and every time I see literally anyone going like, oh, I'm so happy the government's getting involved, is like, you sweet summer child. You have no idea what you're talking about. Like, they're going to get their cut, and it's actually going to get worse, because after they get their cut, then companies are even going to make it worse, and the government's not going to do a damn thing about it. It's all about the money.
And I want to be very clear for anybody listening that I'm not also advocating for anarchy, because I've heard people make that argument. I go, you don't understand. Violence cannot be controlled. Like, it cannot. No. It's just people think they can control it, and then it turns against them themselves. So I don't know. I'm generally a very positive and like hopeful and optimistic individual, just kind of like in my DNA. But when it comes to whatever they're doing, I'm like, all right, I'm not going to trust it. I've heard people make that, like, all kinds of things, like, oh, we just got to get the government to do this for us. It's like, do it for yourselves. Like, that's my thing. Like, do it for yourselves. Like, the best thing you can do is help like parents and educate people not to engage in these systems. That's going to affect the fastest change. That's the only way I see it. That's my cynic in me. And now I want to get back to why I think New World is going to be is faction balanced. Regardless, people assume that there's a faction imbalance.
This I want to hear. This I definitely want to hear.
Here's the thing. How do you take over a zone? Does anybody here know?
I have no idea.
Is it PvP? I think you've got to like.
Isn't it?
I think I watched Asmongold do it. Sort of.
Right, but do you know, like, within the PvP war mode, like what the stakes are? If you have a company, if you have 1,000 people and the other people have 100, what happens?
The 1,000 company rolls over the other people. I don't know.
Violence.
Violence. We just advocated for non-violence, and yes, now we advocate. No, the way you take over a zone is a 50v50 war, meaning, if you have a company of 1,000 people and you have a company of 100 people, you're not going against 1,000 people. It's always going to be balanced to that 50v50. And the people who get selected, there are things that as you play the game increases your odds, like in Boja with like notoriety and things of that nature. But ultimately it's going to put these people. So you could have a small company overtake a large company without any problem. And that's one of the things that I think is going to help keep with faction and help regulate faction imbalance, because that 1,000 company that, they have advantages, right? Oh, okay. They could go and maybe wage war in a couple other areas, but when it comes down to brass tacks, it's still going to be that 50v50 in order for control.
It's like, I don't really think that that's the solution. Cause I mean, like, yeah, sure. We won the territory and then you just get steamrolled all over the map by that 1,000 company people. And they're still getting better loot because you can get like more currency from doing the PvP quests. And ultimately they still end up being dominating. And I don't know how the gear is going to be scaled in those engagements. Cause like I said, I didn't have enough time to do it. I don't know if you know, or if you can even talk about it, but like, if the gear is the gear that they have, the 1,000 sized company is just going to have better gear simply because they can amass resources faster, which means they can get gear either through crafting or through, PvPing and just rolling over the other factions and doing the PvP quests, which also gives them more, what's the currency? It's gold, right? There's gold and then there's Azoth. There's gold, the Azoth, all that stuff. They just get more of that because they're doing the PvP version of the quest that has way more rewards than the PvE version.
And then the N50 people who you didn't gear up get selected for your war and you lose the zone. Like, it's that, like, having that many more people.
Don't you have to sign up?
Yeah, you have to register. So I guess if you were going to bully, you're like, if you don't have this gear score, I don't know how the scaling works, but I honestly, at the end of the day, like, there's no way to truly like balance that unless they decided that it was going to go to the individual companies, because it's still faction based. So you have your company and you're running your guild and things like that. Your guild might not even be selected as a part of your faction for that war itself. So you could sit here and say 1,000, but then you have John, mom and pop, and they got, their people, and they're a part of your faction, because that's kind of how it works. They get selected and they lose every war for you, and you end up never controlling a zone, because dadgum moms and pops out there ruining the Walmart, the Amazons of the world. He says sarcastically, and anybody doesn't know. I make jokes. I like to make jokes.
I don't know why, but all of this faction talk is just making me think of the Fantasy XI. And it feels like an evolved version of the sanction system where you would take over regions by just killing mobs, doing quests, and you had the PvP ballista, which would also highly
that, like, outside the war, like, that's how you undermine. Like, in order to actually like engage that, you can do PvE content, and that's how you earn points and how you basically overthrow the ruling company, is by basically, hey, we're gonna go kill wolves and do all this stuff. You don't have to. It's not 100% PvP focused in that regards. I just wish, because there's a thing called Invasion, which is the world fights you. It's a PvE mode. I wish that would actually.
Dark Souls.
I wish that mode, if you lose an invasion, that it would actually put the zone out and nobody controls it. Like, it doesn't do that yet, but I think that would be kind of the way of also balancing it, where it's like, all right, that company, they're waging all these wars, they control these zones, we're about to wreck their face, as a game balancing self-correction thing. But yeah, it takes me back to Final Fantasy XI. Go ahead, Chillie.
That would be when the Beastmen would take over the zone, when
exactly.
none of the others.
Yeah, Noman is doing stuff in this zone. The Beastmen take it over, and that's what it gives me that impression. I think that would ultimately be something to kind of help solve it. But go ahead.
I don't know much about New World. I'm waiting to try the open beta, hopefully. But so I played a lot of 11, and that's why those references were what I got to. I'm sorry for derailing it with that. So.
And then to bring it all back 360 to our Asmongold effect, you just make sure the other factions can't fill 50, unless you're Asmon, and that's not going to work. The streaming factor also is going to be really interesting, because I've heard a lot of people talk about New World and how, like, what do you do? Like, well, at the end of the day, once you've completed the quest, like, that's when I think, like, the sandbox game starts to show its strength, and that's in the faction wars, and it's in the crafting and gathering, and it's in these systems to allow you to go ahead and do all these fun things. And that's if you like that kind of content. If you don't, there's no subscription fee, so you wait until they come out with another update, and then you jump back into the game itself. And the question is, the thing I've said numerous times with New World, its biggest job is going to be inviting people back to the game, because it's launching September 28th. I know what I'm doing November 19th. I'm curious about what Lost Ark is going to happen in here. Like, the thing that excites me the most about 2021 as a whole is there's a thing called the Steam Deck. I got one pre-ordered, and I'm sitting here like, hell yeah, I'm going to be leveling up like a crazy person, because I'm not going to be subjected to just this room for this gaming experience. I can sit back and play 14 on the Steam Deck. I can play New World on the Steam Deck. I can play these games. I can just go and put some time into it while not necessarily feeling like I'm abandoning my family. Sorry, kids, it's game season. Gotta go.
So one of the things that I do want to ask you about New World is, like, one of the biggest gripes for me is precisely that quest. And as you were talking about, when you're done with the quest, that's when the sandbox shines. And I was just thinking to myself, and this is something that I've mentioned in the video as well, is that I feel like the fact that they went for a theme park main quest line is actually a huge downside to New World, right? Don't you feel that? Because, like, particularly that starting experience is terrible. Like, you're basically, go over there and then come back over here and then go over there and come back over here. And this is like this times 50 before you actually get to leave that beach and go into a city where you do pretty much the same thing. Go over here and then come back and then go over there and then come back.
Right.
And I was just like,
that's where, like, on that note, because New World
just let me go to a town and there's that quest board there, and just let me do quests, or just let me go and, take 100%. Down trees or mine or something. Yeah. That would be way better. And then just let players make their own story. Like, I PvP'd in this section, or, I fought a bear and I had this adventure over here. It would be way cooler than, like, I did this dumb quest that gave me, like, doesn't give you like a staff of Azoth or whatever. Yeah. That now lets me close these things. It's why?
I describe New World as a sand park, because it's not a full theme park, but it's also not a full sandbox. And that's the only real feedback that I gave to the devs was, when it comes to the game itself, I want to see open world farming, mob farming, having a bigger impact, because they scaled that XP down, and then essentially people exploited the town boards for fast leveling. And I want open world party to be a bigger thing, a bigger play. And they could do it one of two ways. In PvP in open world, they added the longer that you're live flag for PvP, you get bonus experience. I go, well, either increase the overall experience drop that mobs give, or add that the longer that mob's alive, just have it give bonus experience like Guild Wars 2. I love that about the Guild Wars 2 system. It's exciting when you see it, like, holy crap, that monster was alive for so long. I just got like a massive chunk of experience. And so I think New World would benefit from that, especially as a leveling option. I don't need it to be the most efficient, but when running around getting like 15, 16, 20, XP per kill, it's like, no, bring back the open world farm. And I think ultimately that will help balance out that model, because then you can choose to do town boards if you want, or while you're grinding out in the level, where you can just go find a camp and go farm mobs till to the end of time. And at the end of the day, I think that's going to be ultimately really exciting to see how that plays out and plays together. But yeah, you're not wrong. I just think that I hope that by the time launch happens, that we've seen some adjustments to how they have the leveling set up in the game itself.
Yeah. And here's the thing, that quest, I don't think it's optional, right? Like, if you don't do that quest, you don't
can't
get
close the things.
You can't close the invasion things. Yeah, I think
You
that
can
is
participate in them, but you can't close them.
Yeah, but I think that's an even bigger thing because, like, if at least it was optional, then I could be like, okay, I can do this to get one of these staffs, or I can go do whatever the hell I want and then just craft the staff later or buy one from the marketplace or whatever.
Yeah.
But the fact that they force you to do that quest, and it's not a very good quest, at least in my opinion. I don't know what your thought is on it. I don't think it's very good.
At the end of the day, I appreciate the voice acting and how I think
the voice acting's cool.
Yeah, they did some really good job with the voice acting. They brought me into the world, and I'm not expecting much because I'm not playing it for when I compare it to Final Fantasy's story, right? And that's where it's like, what New World needs to do is it just needs to show why it's different and not necessarily worry about that too much, because ultimately, maybe if somebody's coming from 14 to go play New World, guess what? They're going to be back into 14 with Endwalker and having tons of stuff to do. But what New World can do is it can establish itself. It can have that sandbox content, which drives people in. Like, and it becomes and creates our own stories. It creates our own drama. And then while we wait for new weapons to change the sandbox, we've already seen even new zones leak where players have gotten into unreleased zones. And it's like, oh yeah, so there's more content that is on the horizon. I think New World's job has to be to kind of establish itself and really set itself up for its first expansion, because that's going to, I think, be what drives a lot of people to go, oh, okay, this is a game now worth trying out. Like for me, if you tell me like, hey, there's this great new TV series out, you got to watch it. I go, it's on season 1. Yeah. I was like, tell me when season 2 drops, because I can't get my heart invested in a new television series. And it ends and it never really concludes. And you're like, but why? They have so many mysteries. And that's just kind of my bias in that regards. Anybody else? Chillie, any thoughts on Lost Ark itself? I know you're going to be playing the New World beta, and I did say the date wrong. I said last week or next week. It's actually 2 weeks from now. Time and me and calendars, I guess we're at odds.
I will, depending on when it drops, I'll give it a chance. But with everything that's going out this year and next year's pretty crazy too, I'm really hyped for Saints Row in February. So we'll see. We'll see what I'm up to at the time when it drops.
Yeah. What about you, Rory? You got any final thoughts? Are you still streaming after this? Because if so, we'll make sure we raid you.
Yeah, I'm gonna still stream for a little bit. In regards to New World, like I said, I'm gonna check it out. Like at this point, I'm gonna be checking out most MMOs that are gonna be coming out. I mean, I even played Bless Unleashed, which was like the 6th release that they've done for that game or something like that. That game's been released so many times. They're like, oh yeah, but now we're releasing in I don't know, friggin' Albania, right? It's like they can't figure out what they're doing with the friggin' game. So it's like, I'm going to be checking out New World. I'm more excited for Lost Ark personally. I think Lost Ark is just going to be more interesting for me. But the biggest thing for me this year is, at this point, is Endwalker. Because like, I already had my 2 Monster Hunter games, which were friggin' amazing. And the only thing I really care about now is Endwalker. So like when November comes, Endwalker is what I'm doing 100%. And New World is going to be something that'll maybe tide me over depending on how interesting it is, how well they manage to capture my attention. And Lost Ark is something that I would like to stick with in the long run, but we'll see.
Yeah. And the only thing, and I see Black Sky talking about like they won't delay it again. I hope not. I don't, because if they were going to delay it again, just announce 2, like whatever that, like just stop playing with my heart. Release the game on the 28th. Let's go. There'll be future updates and more. I think they're doing the right thing, taking time, actually using the beta as a beta from the closed beta, taking the feedback, putting it into practice, and getting the game as polished as it can be for release. Has me excited. I'm very excited about the 28th. That's when I'm going to be taking that day off work. Going to be playing some New World. It's going to be great because it's finally that investment that doesn't reset. People were
You're going to be stuck. You're going to be stuck in that queue for like the whole day.
Maybe, but at the same time, the closed beta, like, let me right in. Like, it will be interesting to see if they have a smooth launch. So everybody always talks about like games as a service having rough launches. If New World can drop with a smooth launch, like they will set the new standard. It will be like,
that will be impressive.
It will be like, I was impressed by how smooth the beta ran for me, but I wasn't playing the whole time. And I think that's one of the strengths of the fact they're doing the open beta. Let's stress that stuff out. Let's find any any weakness, and then that way when the game comes out, they're going to be ready for whatever scale is necessary. I don't think I'm going to be participating in the open beta though. I think I'm just gonna my next deep dive is going to be with the 28th, because I want to invest in my character. I want to invest in my character.
You don't want to keep resetting stuff. It's annoying.
If I'm right, the open beta, even though it's an open beta, which a lot of games don't reset, from what I can remember, it will be reset.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. I've progressed enough from the beginning of the game to know that all right, I'm ready to really make that investment in my character and go from there. So, Chillie, where can people find you, dude?
You can find me on Twitter, MG_Chillie. You can find me at Moogle Go Around Radio on twitch.tv/Moogle Go Around Radio. We just recorded episode 127 last night with Bird of Chess, which was a fun episode where we were talking about healers, what we expect the changes to be by Endwalker, and for some reason insulting Scholar the entire time because none of us play Scholar.
I used to play Scholar.
No offense to Scholars, but we just don't play it. So
yeah, I'm really excited for the healers to see if that brings me back to Scholar, because I've been just white maging it up this whole expansion, because that's really the best choice for me in this regards. What about you, Rory? Where can people find you?
You can find me on twitch.tv/Rurikon, and I'm actually working on a second channel. It's called Rurikon Unleashed. I don't even know the actual URL of it, to be honest, because I've been doing like a lot of stream highlights and stuff that's not related to Monster Hunter. And you of all people know exactly why I'm doing the second channel, right, Brian? You got like 50 channels over there or something.
Wait, Brian has more than one channel?
That's right. You know how you do the second. Multi-channels. It's the future.
Yeah, it is.
Congrats on your second channel.
Yeah, I'm working on that, and just like checking out a bunch of MMOs and stuff. The next MMO that I'm going to be diving deeper into, because I tested ESO and Guild Wars 2, and Guild Wars 2 I feel like is just a really good fit for how I'm feeling right now, because
it feels good.
The leveling experience where you're out in the world and there's just like a lot of people around. And it's not the first time. This is the worst part. It's not the first time I'm playing Guild Wars 2. Like, I have a max level character. I did my /plate on there, which is actually /age. And I had over 300 hours put into the game, but I couldn't remember a damn thing of how to play it. So I just started fresh.
That's how I did it. When I returned, I was like, I had a level cap character, and I was like, oh, I'll make a necromancer. So I leveled up necro. So I have a warrior necro. I'm almost done with elementalist. And then I'm going to do like Mesmer, and I'm just putting a little time in. I really wish that game supported controller natively. And I know I've got people in Discord, and I need to team up with them to try to see if I can actually get that to work, because I would love to be able to kick back, relax, and just kind of grind it out from time to time in Guild Wars. But I don't have that option. So I default to 14 easily. I default to Destiny easily. I'll default to New World easily because it supports controller. I'll default to the games that were like, yes, I actually went out and bought like a keypad and an MMO mouse, and it really makes a difference, but it only makes a difference in this space where other games exist outside of this space. And so as somebody who's like, let me just pop in to do something real quick, I'm going to default to something that I can do that's very comfortable in the long run in that self. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up for the podcast. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. This has been Epic Loot Radio. My name is Brian. That was Rory and Chillie. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thanks for being here live. Be sure to subscribe to the Ginger Gaming Radio YouTube channel, and also check out the MP3. But otherwise, outside of that, have a fantastic day, and we will see you next time. Take care.
Goodbye.